at the Hood School is not great either.
No, absolutely not. And I would say that the kindergarten at the batch with 21 students in a couple of those classes is probably higher than I'd like to see also. 22 in a kindergarten class at the Hood. I mean, we don't have a lot of free space for extra students in any of our classrooms. If you look through the size of all of our classrooms, I mean, many of them are falling within our guidelines, but many of them are still outside the guidelines that we had set for a number of the students.
Grade 3 at the bachelor school is also 99 students in 4 sections.
Right.
Again, as the year goes on, you're likely to have more students arriving, and that's only going to increase that number.
And that's inclusive of the students with IEPs, those numbers?
Well, it's noted we have 2 language-based classrooms at the Hood School, and at the other schools, for example, we have a couple of co-taught classrooms where there are 2 teachers working with all of the children in the class because of certain special education.
Any other questions or comments? The good news is I didn't get any phone calls in the first few days, and that's always a good sign. I don't think any of us did, so I think that's a good sign that things are off to a good start here. Great. Thanks, David. Next, we have a proposal for a World Affairs Club. I believe this is from Mr. Pensopoulos at the high school. Actually, you know what? Instead of that, why don't we go back to the under continued business? We have school building projects, which we have nothing specific to report other than the bachelor school project that we already completed. We have the FY 2010 budget development as an item, and I know people up there are probably saying FY 2010, we just opened the school year for 2008-2009. Well, time doesn't stop, and in the finance planning committees, we've already been discussing the 2010 budget, fiscal year 2010 budget. So I'll let David take the lead here.
Well, you're right. The finance planning team meets on a regular basis, and at our last meeting, Mr. Masseri distributed basically some very preliminary budget guidelines for FY 2010. And I think the bottom line is that when you take a look at the projected, these are very early projections on the total revenue, and then you also factor in some of the anticipated fixed expenses, namely employee health insurance, looking at an increase in the order of about 8.5%. You look at the increased costs of county retirement, which has to be paid, and then you look at the also for the school department and on the town side, there are certain retirement payouts that have to be done. All of these would be considered approximately fixed costs. So when you take that amount of those 3, the health insurance, county retirement, and then the retirement payouts, and you subtract it from the anticipated new revenue, it leaves about $750,000, $746,000 to be distributed between the general government and the school department budget. And if you take that money, and again, this is a preliminary discussion, but out of that $750,000, if you give $250,000 to the town, $250,000, and about $500,000 to the school department, then when you compare that to what is anticipated to be the budget, FY 2010 budget, using general government increase next year of overall 3%, and 6% on the school side, you can see that this is going to leave a gap, or lead to a gap. And this gap is over, it's over $1 million at this point. I think that is pretty accurate. And then there are a number of risk factors or unknowns. That is, what will happen to Chapter 70, school aid, as we move into the next fiscal year, what happens to the lottery aid. There's strong indication that the lottery aid is decreasing. Will the new growth in North Reading hit what is projected? And therefore, will local receipts for other kinds of collections that are obtained in the town? And then also, what about snow and ice? There's a deficit in snow and ice. It will have to be addressed in free cash. And we don't know what kind of winter the town is going to project. So it's fair to say that our opening discussion with the finance planning team, I guess a week ago at this point, was pretty somber, and that both the town and the school will need to work together with the finance committee to really determine what will be the best strategy for the coming year.
Mrs. Bach and I were at the meeting, and I would say it's not a big surprise to us. I guess the good news is we've got plenty of advance warning and time to try to figure out how to work through it. But this is going to require what Dr. Troughton and we talked a lot about going in during last budget session, which is some level of creativity to figure out how we're going to continue. The last thing any of us wants to do is, and I keep talking about this, is being on a roller coaster. We've never got to the top of the hill, but we get halfway up the hill, and then the brakes slip on the cars, and then we go back down again. And I think that we're going to have to start working immediately to figure out how we can fit everything we have right now into next year's budget.
Yeah, I mean, one great big if to that list of risks is if question 1 passes in the November elections, and the people in Massachusetts decide to do away with the state income tax, and then there'll be no local receipts. So, I don't hear much talk around towns about that, and I know there's, the line we draw of what we can and cannot say politically, but that's something every selectman and school committee member should be holding forums on. And yes, because without any backup plan of how we're going to pay for services, it's a great idea. Everybody loves the idea of not paying taxes, but what happens the day after the election? Who keeps everything running? So
this goes right back to what I was saying earlier about civic responsibility. And nobody wants to pay taxes. Not only that, but I don't want to pay the guy at the gas station when I fill my tank up. I mean, I don't want to spend money for electricity. I like electricity in my house, but I don't want to spend the money for it. I like to drive the car around, but I got to put gas in the tank. These are things you have to do. Well, in the government business and the town business, we have to pay taxes in order to have the things, the services that the town provides. And citizens need to come to grips with that. Again, nobody likes to pay taxes. Everybody would like it to be lower, but they're actually a pretty good bargain right now. We've had 28 years of Prop 2.5, with inflation at 4.5, and Prop 2.5 holding expenses at 2.5. That's all. When you compound that up, that's a lot of difference. And we are all in this state need to bite the bullet. And we used to be Taxachusetts, and now we're below the middle of the states in taxes. that's a long way we've come off of where we used to be. It's time to start paying again, start increasing the cost of ownership of citizenry in a town.
I think it's important to note that these are preliminary figures. You could look at them one way and say, geez, the revenue figures are always so conservative at this time. However, I think Dr. Troton's right. These revenue figures could actually be higher than what comes in, because I think we're looking for level funding on Chapter 70. And the one thing I want to point out is, North Reading does a lot better in Chapter 70 than a lot of our surrounding towns. And if they ever decide next year that they're going to try to play catch up with Linfield and some of the other towns, we get a much higher percentage in Linfield than several other towns in our area. And if they decide to play catch up, who knows? We could be on the short end of the stick at some point. We've gotten tremendous increases the last 2 years thanks to the work of the citizens groups and Brad Jones and the school committee and the selectmen, everybody working hard to get that money. But I always fear when I see people pushing for that. There's a plan to bring everybody up to at least 17.5% by a certain year, and there are a lot of people pushing to do that for next year. If that happens next year, the money's going to have to come from somewhere, and I'm worried that towns that are getting over 17.5%, which we're one of those, who knows? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think it's something that we have to think about, along with all the other things that Dr. Troton mentioned. As I said, it gives us a long time to study the problem and figure it out. But at the same time, it's the numbers are pretty stark and bleak to look at.
The difficulty that I see with it is that we already know where the numbers are going from a cost side. And the cost numbers are escalating at 3 or 6%, depending on which part of our government, town government we're looking at. That's more than 2.5%. It's been a long time since I had a math class, but I know that doesn't work. You can't have a 2.5% increase with receipts and expenses going up at 3 or 6. We're going out of business, folks. We're going into bankruptcy at that. We're not going to be able to pay the bill. So we need to raise more money somehow. We're pretty sure it isn't coming from the state. In fact, maybe it's not even going to drop off at the state. It's time for us to act like grown-ups and get our wallets up.
Well, I know that, I support the efforts that the town administrator he's trying very hard with the GIC. And he's, meeting some roadblocks with getting the percentages of votes that he needs. And that's something we need to get behind, because I think that will, just build up some more taxpayer confidence. I think some of this question 1 is a reaction to people not being confident that their money's being spent wisely. And, on the state level, I would have to concur. But on the local level, I think we do a good job, and people could be confident in where we put the money. So I think we need to make a commitment to look at the insurance, the employee insurance issue. And I also think that we need to look when we go into contracts at step raises that are in place and the additional salary increases that are given in addition to that, and help the public understand our contracts better.
So I think the superintendent just wanted to kind of put the numbers out there, and they're being discussed now. And David, I know you have this at the end of the agenda, but I wonder if it made sense to, since at that same meeting we talked about the 2009 budget issues, I don't know if you want to address that now or wait.
I think it would make sense.
Makes sense to.
Paul, I don't know, do you want to
Sure.
go over that?
I think the genesis of the topic was a memo that the chairperson of the Finance Committee sent out,
Right.
Abby Hurlbut. And in effect, what Abby is saying is that she wanted to formally express the Finance Committee's extreme concern about the current